It's time for Solutions for Seniors to Be, here on WATD. Here to help make your golden years golden, offering guidance on programs and services available to you and your loved ones in your retirement. Now, here's your host, Chris Shea.
I've been in the right place.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to the broadcast today. I am excited to have the opportunity to bring in via the world of remote dial-ins now with the Zoom world, a woman out of New York who I met through my networking experiences. She got introduced to me by somebody else, and we hit it off greatly because she has an organization called Envision Healthy Retirement, and the emphasis there is on healthy. So I'd like to introduce you to Nancy Schwartz. And because people can usually introduce themselves better than I can do it for them, I'm going to let Nancy introduce herself to you. So Nancy, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, good morning, Chris, and thank you for hosting this on Sunday. And I'm very excited to be here. And I love speaking with you in our earlier conversations. And if I may take a tiny space here just to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm that 40-year corporate executive, having reached the level of a partner in a global management company, and then went on to build my own search company. So what I did was routine executive search, and that was extremely successful. And then at some point in time, I thought about, what's next? But also in the context of, wow, I love my job, but I really feel that I can make more impact. And how can I do that? And so that facilitated a 5-year learning journey, particularly studying with influencers that really talked about the longevity, the science, the health of the holistic system, right? The mind, body, and soul. And you and I have talked about this and shared this as well, that really in the financial management world, we don't really talk about the person, but rather we talk about the pennies, which are extremely important. But I also believe you cannot have really a healthy retirement without your health.
Well, as a financial advisor, right, people think the hardest part for me is the money. And I tell people the easy part is the money, because that's just numbers and mathematics and probabilities and forecasting. And the hardest part is people, because people have this thing called emotions, and those fluctuate based upon who the heck knows what's going on in the world, right? We're in December in the holiday season, and I can remember back when I was a kid, if you didn't get the toy you wanted, the world was going to crash and end. And it's right. And I don't think much has changed for people. It's like, if you don't get what you want, it can be catastrophic, and that can be just about anything, right? I mean, my daughter was recently not healthy, and it cast a sour mood on me for a period of time, because I've got this 13-year-old human being that I'm supposed to be able to take care of and can't, right? She's sick. She went back to school. She got sick again. Same sickness, just kind of bubbling along. Not strep throat, not COVID, not mono, just sick. And it's really frustrating as a parent to be able to, like, there's nothing we can do except just wait it out and give you some medicine, right? And I've learned also along the years that if you're not healthy, you'll spend any amount of money you possibly can to get healthy, right? Yeah. So the finances are important, but if you're not healthy, who cares if you got $20 million in the bank? You can't enjoy life.
Right. And I think that's such an important point, Chris, and to your point that you can enjoy life. But I think even more so, we're living longer. Science tells us we're living 30, 40 years longer. And it's a statistic fact that usually in our last 16 years, we present with two, not one, but two chronic diseases. So not being well can really take an impact, just like, as you say, not only on the human, that person, but also the family that surrounds that person. So it's more, I like to think of it in much more of a broader context than just that individual, but really around, and even if you're a solopreneur, in terms of your own career and life and longevity, you still will affect those who are in your network or your friends, if you don't have any standing or close by relatives. So I think that why shouldn't we use science to be able to help ourselves improve? And it's to this point and to your point, the quality of our life. And I think the quality piece is so important for your child, certainly for people in my age bracket. Why wouldn't I want to be healthy, to do the things I want to do, when I want, how I want to do them?
And I think you just touched upon my definition of retirement. And I ask people all the time, what's your definition of retirement? And I get all these things and I say, well, mine's very simple. To be able to do what you want, when you want, with return for how much money you make. If you're doing that, you're retired. And I say that and people kind of look at me sideways and I say, well, I use my parents as an example. My dad retired from working at the town clerk and he just didn't want to do anything. My mom, on the other hand, she was a realtor for 35 years and she was doing real estate deals 5 months before she passed away.
Fantastic.
Because she would go to her boat and take out the iPad, take out her phone and scroll through things and make calls and sit there and sip her wine. But from April through October, she'd be at the boat 6 or 7 days a week, just enjoying it. And that for her was retirement. For a lot of people, they go, that's all she wanted to do. I'm like, yeah, that's, after my dad passed away, that's really what you want to do for 3 years. Just go. And then, after the boat, she'd either bring people down and hang out with her, or she'd go and have dinner with them somewhere else that was nearby. And that was her retirement. She loved it.
Yeah. Well, she held that connection with nature, obviously the water, but also with people, right? So she would bring her people to her boat or go elsewhere. And that's a key dynamic, Chris, that you touch upon, is that we are all humans and we need that connection piece. It's so important. And I also believe very strongly in multi-generational connection piece, so that we learn from other people who are experts in their field, be it to the younger generation who are bringing new ideas forth, and we're constantly growing together. And I think that that's so important to hear, and not just simply, I will have friends just my age, because so much is excluded. Why aren't we knowing the generation 2 or 3 decades past where we are, and then also the younger generation as well?
Yeah, no, there are studies that show that once people stop learning, they kind of stop functioning in a lot of ways. It's truly remarkable how I was talking to someone and their mom was doing a whole lot of stuff until she was 95 years old, right before she passed away, because she was constantly doing things. And whenever you hear about the people that have that longevity, it's usually because they continue to be active. I have a friend here in Marshfield. We play poker on a regular basis, and I just found out in November she turned 90. And she goes and plays poker at a bar on Tuesday nights from 6 to 10 p.m. She does ballroom dancing. She goes out and does goes to plays and shows and arts. And she's got this life that's just full of energy, which is why she keeps going.
Right. Right. And I think that that's so important for your audience to hear, that she obviously has a purpose in her life. She has meaning in her life. She has connection. She has movement in her life. She has interest in her life. And it's all these factors that are contributing to her health. And therefore she's 90. It's extraordinary and beautiful. It's a beautiful story that you tell.
Oh, yeah. She often says that she doesn't have one person in her life because her husband passed away years ago, but she's got a lot of quaint acquaintances that she's
Love it.
factored a bunch of different people into different segments of her life, and no one person can fill them all. But she's comfortable enough to say, I don't need one person to fill them all.
Right.
I need all of them filled by different people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a refreshing perspective, because in our society, a lot of the times it's like, okay, you got to find your one person for you that can do everything for you and fill up everything in your life. And that's not always the case.
Yeah.
You know.
And what they're learning from the science point of view, and I love what she's done, and I love that you question that, is to say that we are our best friend. We are the person that we need to come home to. And by finding that, if you will, best friend who is everything, you're giving that power to that person. So unfortunately, when someone passes away, it's a very difficult and huge hole to fill. And so we're learning so much about the mind, and really it impacts the body as well in terms of just sticking with that one person. But as this beautiful human has shown us the path forward of really rounding out her connections and I bet she's still developing those connections as we speak at this moment.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I met her before the pandemic, and I thought she was great then, and she just continues to show up. And every time I'm like, "You're still doing that? You're still doing that?" Yep. And that's, it's remarkable, and it's marvelous, fantastic, and I think it's a wonderful lesson that we can all learn from.
Yes.
If we really want to.
Right. And I think that's, you point out, if we really want to, right? So if we really want to. So what does that mean in my world and your world? It's that human, that individual takes ownership of their lives, just like they take ownership on their financial side. They take ownership of themselves. And our biggest risk factor is ourselves. That's the biggest risk factor. So if you look at it from an equation of finance, or if you look at it from an equation of, the human risk factor, right? By taking ownership of our lives, we're really setting ourselves up for success in our lives.
Yeah, I want to get back to that ownership, but first we're going to take a little bit of a pause here and hear from sponsors.
Are you fit to retire? I'm Chris Shea, financial advisor with BPS Financial Services in Marshfield. I work with clients to create a 100-day plan that can help get you started so that you can get the most out of your retirement. You've worked your whole life towards your goal of retirement. Let BPS Financial Services put together a plan that will help you enjoy your retirement. Find out how a 100-day plan tailored to you can help you get started in your retirement at fit2retire.com/Chris-Shea. Or call 781-733-5996. That's 781-733-5996. And now for my fast red disclosure, as this has been compliance approved.
Chris Shea is a registered representative offering securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA/SIPC, a broker-dealer and registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Located at 752 Ocean Street, Marshfield, Massachusetts, 02050.
That's 781-733-5996.
And welcome back to Sunday mornings and Solutions for Seniors. Again, we've got Nancy Schwartz with us, and we were talking about taking ownership of your life and how that can show up. And I think the biggest piece of ownership is understanding who you are and what you want. And sometimes it is really challenging for people when they get to retirement because, as you said when we got started, Nancy, you were an executive at a big company for 30, 40 years plus. And as you know, December, you had the holidays and parties and things like that. One of the things that I know that happens at all the functions I go to is the big question. What do you do for a living? Because then people can put you in that little box and say, I know a little bit about who you are as a person, whether or not that's true or not, because it's all stereotypes. However, when somebody retires and the question comes up, what do you do? And if someone says, I used to be X, that's an unempowering statement.
Yes, very unempowering. Labeling is dangerous. And you and I have talked about using that and then upgrading the label. What is that label? Who are you now? I think is the question to ask. And why do you want to be that person, right? What again, we're coming back to purpose and meaning. And then also over time, and these are things that both Chris, you and I know that it's not instantaneous. When I ask myself that question, who am I? I'm like, gosh.
5 years, right?
I don't even know, right? I have no clue. And it's a matter of trial and error, right? And having the wisdom and knowledge of yourself, but also going out on a limb and trying something. And so what if you fail? Who cares? We now know this was interesting, but it's not that I'm really looking at. It's not so much. I thought it would be great, and then going on and trying something else. So I think that's such a great and hopeful suggestion for people, because it's not going to be the first thing that you try that you think that it's just going to sink beautifully. And we also know that it's hybrid retirement. So whatever you design for yourself, whatever model you choose for yourself, that's really important too. Maybe you've decided, I want to go full in and get another global opportunity, or I want to just do boards, or I want to play tennis with my friends, or golf, or boat, but I also want to have time because I want to write that book that I want to do, or whatever those wish lists, if you will, that come true. And you know, I always talk to my clients about looking at a pie chart and allocating very specific time to specific things that you want to do. Where were you in a career doing almost 99.9% of time is to the career, right? But now how do we chunk it up? Relationships, family, the love of sailing, the water, you know, all these things that are really intrinsic to being a human. And then from that, summarizing, okay, now I can start thinking about, you know, what is my identity? Who am I now today?
Yeah. I mean, so the Fit to Retire platform that I help people with looks at the 5 areas of retirement success. Self-identity, we kind of talked about. Social, health and nutrition, personal relationships, and the money just pays for it, right? If you don't have the other things, again, having $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $20 million in the bank is great. But if it's just sitting there and you're miserable, that's not what people envision because you work again. And when you're working, all you can say is, I can't wait till I retire so I can do what I want. And then when you retire, you're like, what the hell do I want to do? Which is why when I tell people, I said, look, come talk to me 5 years before you want to retire, maybe 10 years, because you've got to start planning this in advance. And I create with my clients a 100-day playbook so that when they retire, the next Monday, they've got the first 100 days already mapped out. which means they're already on that path, as opposed to the trial and error that kind of took you 5 years to figure out, right? If you had started that prior to your retirement, you probably wouldn't have spent 5 years figuring it out, right? You would have thought about it in advance.
Well, in my case, because I was operating and it was a pretty hefty job, I didn't have that time. So I didn't have that amount of time. And that's what I'm finding, because everyone's so busy now, right? But yes, practically and theoretically, absolutely plan for this. I think that that's so important. In my case, I just simply I didn't have the time capacity, because I was already overwhelmed. But when I did have the time capacity, then I went to look at, what is it that will fulfill me, right, in life, and for a very long time. And also, to your point, Chris, and I think it's so important to continue to have that personal growth, always learning, always meeting new people, getting different perspectives. What's the outlook? How can I improve myself? And the only sure investment, and you know this from finance, is yourself. That's the only sure investment, is to constantly invest in growth for yourself. And I think that I wish I had had more time when I was operating to invest in myself, because the companies, would pull back budgets and things like that, and they wouldn't necessarily offer, platforms for people. But now, absolutely investing.
Yeah. And it doesn't, when we talk about finding your thing, it can be as simple as being the person that goes to your local library and reads to children, right? It doesn't have to be some grandiose world traveler. I'm going to change the world. You can have the impact of changing lives, if that's what you want, by just going and reading to kids, or volunteering at one of my parents' friends. He would go in and talk to people in the hospital, right, or in facilities, and that was what he loved to do, because that was his calling, right? Yeah. You just got to figure out what it is for you that makes you fulfilled and gives you a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. I talk about that very much, that you can impact people tremendously in your own home, locally, as you say, in those wonderful organizations that you mention, and institutions, and then globally. So you pick it. Who am I? Where, right? Who am I? Where? And be able to go have that impact statement, not only for yourself, but who you are impacting as well.
And then I think when I try and educate people on how to retire, hopefully that starts to become the norm as opposed to the abnormal, right? Because you're taught, again, my daughter's 13, she's in school. She's taught how to go to school. She's taught how to she's going to soon be taught how to get into high school and do well in high school. Then taught how to get good grades and either go to college or get a job. And then when she gets a job, she's taught how to advance in that job, right, in theory, and get promoted and find a better job. When's the last time somebody taught you how to retire?
They don't. That's the problem. That's the problem. And it's such an unknown. And when you are working and so busy, you really think more day to day or quarter to quarter or year to year, but not so far out, 25, 30 years in your career. And I think it's a fault of the system. I think it's a huge opportunity for the financial world, but it requires steady communication and building of relationships within the corporations, of educating their employees, employee benefits, all sorts of packaging like that, as well as personally, right? So how you educate yourself in terms of retirement, yes, can be driven by a big entity, but that has to be blessed at the chairman, the C-suite, and that's the culture of the company, and not a lot of companies that I've seen out there as proactive as we would like to see. Yes, they supply the financial side of the house in terms of packaging. They will supply, as part of that package, outplacement services. But outplacement is very, very different than what you, Chris, and I do. So, and that's my passion in talking about this, and your passion is to be able to educate those types of companies that they really need to start thinking holistically about their employee. And in terms of, they're coming in at a very junior level, they grow, they do wonderful things for the company, and the company does wonderful things for them. But at some point, they will exit, and that's where the inflection point comes for the company and that employee.
Yeah, and it's, as we get towards the end of this, it's one of those things that I take a look at. There's a company out there called Betterment, and they do studies and surveys on employees. And depending upon when they do the survey, between 65 and 80% of employees want additional financial education.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Above and beyond just what's in their 401k plan. And I think, much to your point, there's an opportunity there for businesses to be better. Now, I know we could talk about this for a long time because we've already talked on your podcast for a little while, but we are getting close to the end of our time today. Got a couple minutes left. If someone were interested in learning more about how to get in touch with you, about you and what you do, how would they get in touch with you?
Thank you, Chris. So I think the easiest way to get in touch with me is through my website, which is envisionhealthyretirement.com. And I'm just going to spell it. It's Envision with an E, E-N, Vision, healthyretirement.com. And on that website, I have a complimentary strategy call that I would be happy to support you in and around retirement age. And also there's free downloads in terms of sleep magnet and detoxing from all our electronics. There's many free resources and videos also on there.
And you have a podcast too, right?
I do have a podcast which comes off of YouTube and on my channel, Nancy Schwartz. And I interview really amazing people such as yourself, Chris, who really are impacting those executives who are in and around retirement. And I always do it with the thought process of with health. And it's really an educational and advisory and really inspiring podcast. We do not sell anything on this podcast.
Nope. It's wonderful. I'm humbled to be part of it and grateful that you're able to join us today. So again, Chris Shea with BPS Financial Services and Fit to Retire platform. Nancy Schwartz was kind enough to grace us with her presence today. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday and enjoy the car guy. Here we go.
Thank you, Chris.
I've been in the right place, but it must have been the wrong time. I'd have said the right thing, but it must have used the wrong line. I've been on the right trip, but I must have used the wrong car. Head is in a bad place, and I wonder what's good for. I've been in the right place, but it must have been the wrong time. My head is in a bad place, but I'm having such a good time. I've been running, trying to get hung up in my mind. Just got to give myself a good talking to this time. Just need a little brain salad surgery. I got to cue my insecurity. That I've been in the wrong place, but it must have been the right time. I've been in the right place, but it must have been the wrong song. I've been in the right vein, but it seems like a wrong on. That I've been in the right world, but it seems like the wrong. sneaking, peeping, hiding out down the street. See my life shaking with every who I meet. Root-fried confusion is making itself clear. Wonder which way I go to get on out of here. Cause I've been in the right place, but it must have been the wrong time. And I done said the right thing, but it must have used the wrong line.